Welcome to Health Professional Radio. I'm your host, Neil Howard. Thank you so much for joining us again. You know, studies show that by the second week of February, about 80% of people have already given up on their New Year's resolutions. Well, joining us is Bob Raleigh, the founder of PathSight Predictive Science. He's also the author of The Search for Why, a revolutionary new model for understanding others, improving communication, and healing division. He's joining us on the program to talk about how we can use a new scientific model that classifies people into 5 unique individual behavioral patterns. Welcome to Health Professional Radio, Bob Raleigh.
Nice to be here and looking forward to it.
You're an author, The Search for Why. Give our listeners a bit of your professional background, and then let's talk about how we can use this revolutionary new scientific model to improve our lives.
Sure. I was trained as a psychologist at Syracuse University and had a number of interesting jobs, but nothing like this. You know, Google every year creates a state of the search world, and they try to take everything that we've searched, 50 billions and trillions of people searching, and they try to make some statement as to what it means for us. And you know, last year they said we were looking for heroes, and the year before that we were looking for love and looking how to do important things. Well, this year, more than any other time in history, they said we were searching for why. And why ends up being not just a simple question, but it becomes a search for the root of something. And you know, this year we're dealing with a pandemic, systematic racism, we're dealing with economic collapse, and people were really looking for that. And that really was part and parcel how we decided to write this book. And so what we did is we looked at the science of why people do what they do, and we tried to take stock of what do we know today. And for 100 years, we've really focused on demographics, looking at demographics. And unfortunately, demographics tell us what we do and who we are, but they do a lousy job of telling us why we do it. So we looked at the tools that we had, and we felt that we could make an improvement. And so what we've tried to do is look into data science, neuroscience, and behavioral science to look for those breakthroughs. And combining those with what we've known, we think we've come up with a new version of the old story of demographics, and allows us to come up with really using our instinctual profiles to marry with demographics, and we come up with really razor sharp understanding of some of the things that people have trouble doing.
So if I'm understanding, looking for the why leads you to the who within the demographic, and then I guess you decide who is doing what and why are those particular people doing that particular thing.
Well, what we've been able to do is add these instinctual profiles or patterns that people had. These instincts have been around since we came off the plains and started living in caves, and people joined groups, and their instincts allowed them to perform important survival type behaviors in those groups. For example, the instinct to care for children is really a strong one, but it's variable in people. And those people who, back in the day, came to the group, prevented violence towards children, more people survived, and the group survived. So those are the kinds of instincts that we're talking about. Instincts for fairness, instincts for authority. Who are you loyal to? And purity. these things are instinctually motivated, and if you add those to the demographics, you get really, really stunningly accurate insights into people.
Don't you have to, I guess, narrow it down, because the demographics can become so involved. There's so many groups of so many different people. So don't you, when you're talking about patterns, don't you have to narrow it down to, say, a few different types of patterns and then associate those patterns with certain behaviors? Is that what we're talking about doing?
That's exactly right. There's 7.8 billion people in the world. And we think that we've identified 5 patterns that go with our instincts and our demographics to give us unique ways that people shape their worldview.
Let's talk about how we can use these 5 unique individual behavior patterns that you're talking about to improve our communications and our relationships.
Well, that's a long list of things you're asking me. but if we just start on the topic of let's say you're coming into the new year, and maybe, just maybe, you could see fit to say, I'd like to drop that 15 pounds that my COVID quarantine has laid on top of me. So what would you do? Well, the first thing we would do is start to say, let's look at your instinctual profile, your instincts that you're sensitive to, because those things are present at birth, and then throughout childhood and adolescence, your life experiences come and say, how am I doing with my instincts with the world? And they edit those instincts into the way you decide. The patterns for your instincts give you decision-making and values and things like that. So when you exit adolescence, you now have a kind of intact decision tree that you want to use. So depending on those 2 immovable forces out there in the worldview point of view that we have, these 2 worldviews account for roughly percent of each side of the world. Well, if we're on top of one worldview, you might be interested in things that impact people as individuals. And the other one, you might be impacting people as a group. And so we get these types of instinctual profiles that guide your decision making. So let's say you were, and we would ask you things like, if you were to get into a weight reduction point of view, what kind of program would you like? Do you like things that are clear-cut targets, or do you usually design them for yourself? We would ask you, do you like to do things that are expected, or are your expectations personally generated? Is the organization of those things a plus or a minus to you? Do you like to have your hard work recognized by people? Or sometimes people like to use points and rewards. Is that important to you? Or do you want these things to stay private? So when we can analyze you in terms of which one of those points of view your instincts are leading you towards, and one set of instincts would probably lead you to a program like Weight Watchers. It's a true legacy program for weight loss. They write things down. They have public weigh-ins. There's great tips that they can give you. Their points are awarded, and that would be in one of our social binding points of view, Weight Watchers would be appropriate for you. But the other one where you want to be, expectations are important to you, but they're internal. You're self-satisfied if you get into getting into a behavior change program, and your success is your business. Well, if in that case, I might suggest you look at something like Noom.
Okay.
That they've identified triggers and thoughts and behaviors. So this is the way you would use these instinctual patterns to define the best way for you.
So basically, come next year, if we get an understanding of our personal behavioral patterns, we can get a grip on why we made the resolution in the first place, maybe keep the resolution, or at least understand why we're not going to keep it, right?
Absolutely.
Right.
And this is simple, but we've applied this for protocol management for people in chronic diseases. It helps them make life and death decisions in terms of how they want to manage their protocol. So it's really a wide-ranging topic.
Where can our listeners get a copy of your book, Search for Why, a revolutionary new model for understanding others, improving communication, and healing division? And also, where can we get some more information about PathSight? Both
can be found at PathSight, PathSight.com, and the typical outlets for books, Amazon, Target, Barnes & Noble, all those are where the book is pretty widely available.
Great. Well, Bob, thanks for joining us here on Health Professional Radio.
Thank you very much.
You've been listening to Health Professional Radio. I'm your host, Neil Howard. Audio copies of this program are available at hpr.fm and healthprofessionalradio.com.au. You can also subscribe to the podcast on iTunes, listen in, download at SoundCloud, and be sure and subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com, Health Professional Radio.